Good evening and welcome to Spooky South Coast. Tim Weisberg here, along with the silent assassin Matt Costa, science advisor Matt Moniz off tonight, psychic medium Stephanie Burke off tonight. It is just the two of us, Matt. It is old school. It is the same way that it used to be way back in...
And live stream only.
And live stream... Well, the live stream only is relatively new, but the just the two of us goes all the way back to January 26th, 2006.
I always forget the date. I know it's like around 2006.
Well, I just remember because it is...
Wasn't it supposed to be the first of that year or something?
I forget what it was supposed to be. It was October or November of 2005 when we actually were told that we could do the show.
Right.
But then we took a couple of months to kind of get ready and to plan things out. That's when we used to actually book the show months in advance instead of a couple of hours before we went into the studio.
I feel like there was another factor that kind of put a kink in the cog.
Well, I mean, I know that we were still...
Was there like Celtics or something?
Oh, yeah. I think there was.
Maybe. I
think we ran Celtics to Bruins. We ran on the station at that time. But just getting ready, too. I mean, you were coming into the locker room and learning how to run the board during the locker room. And I was not learning how to run the board. I found that out on the fly from you. You taught me. So, but you had to come in and learn first. But anyway.
Which is why we still have problems to this day.
Right. And that's why we're a little bit late starting tonight, because I didn't have everything set up and ready. But that's because I was eating and talking instead of getting ready for the show.
You need your energy.
I didn't want to eat on the show. That would just be gross.
And unprofessional.
It would be very unprofessional, especially to eat spaghetti on the show, because that's what I was eating.
Right. I don't know what Town Square Media's spaghetti policy is, but...
Yeah, I think...
I don't think it's... No, you can't eat it over the board. I think that would be frowned upon.
I think they would get upset if I was getting marinara sauce in all the equipment. But we are here to talk about the paranormal. Of course, we have to talk about food a little bit as well, but we will be talking about the paranormal tonight with our guest, Peter Haviland, who will be joining us in a little while. And he is a parapsychologist, a hypnotherapist, a paranormal researcher, and he's a very interesting guy. We're going to have a lot to talk about with him, but we'll also take your questions and comments for him as well at 508-996-0500 or 877-996-1420. You can join us in the chat room on Spooky South Coast's live streaming video, which normally this is where I'd promote to people on the radio that if you want to watch the show and chat with the show while we're on the radio, you can do that on our YouTube channel. But tonight we are YouTube only because the Red Sox are still going on. I thought it was an afternoon game or an early evening game, but I'm assuming that there must have been something to do with the rain earlier and things might have gotten held up. I didn't really pay attention today. I was in full getting ready to be DME mode, watching all kinds of interesting videos and saying, all these years that I thought there was an easier way to do what we were doing with Spooky South Coast, it turns out there is. Did you know that you can actually make your own podcast, Matt? I know that you know.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But I saw some instructions on how to do that. Don't worry, we're not going to change the Spooky South Coast podcast because A, it's been going that way for so long, and B, we are way too lazy. So you don't have to worry about any changes with that.
Right. If it ain't broke or kind of broke.
It was kind of broke, though. We were getting a lot of complaints from people that they were having issues getting the latest episodes, but you think that you fixed that for the most part?
I think so. If anyone does have any problems, feel free to message us, spookycrew@spookysouthcoast.com. If anything, email us and just tell us what service you use, and then we'll kind of maybe focus more on that.
Yeah, we were getting some complaints from people saying, oh, I can't get the podcast. And, we need a little bit more information about that. We need to know how you're getting it. And maybe it wouldn't be a bad idea for everybody out there that's listening. And I know this is, tens of thousands of people every day that download this show. So we're probably asking for it. But if you want to reach out to us and email us, spookycrew@spookysouthcoast.com, or even just email me directly, tim@spookysouthcoast.com, and let us know how you listen to the show, so that we can see, what different ways and what different channels are working, because we can't check we send this out through a podcast service that sends it out to every podcast service that's out there. So we can't track down every different way that you get the feed. Right. We can make sure that the feed itself is good, but we can't, make sure that feed is working correctly across all those sites unless you tell us which ones are giving you an issue. So.
Right. Remember when someone said they were listening to us on Podcast Pickle, and we were like, "What's Podcast Pickle?"
Right, and then we go on there and we find out we're pretty popular on Podcast Pickle, which I don't know if that still exists anymore. I don't know,
but it was a thing.
But yeah, we were pretty excited the first time we saw ourselves on iTunes. Like, oh, we made it, which pretty much every podcast makes it on iTunes, as long as you don't suck. As long as there's more than 30 seconds worth of content, they usually approve you. But I don't even have iTunes on my computer anymore, so I haven't even read the reviews. But we used to get some pretty interesting reviews on iTunes.
Did we?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I'll have to go back to that at some point. I guess I could download it onto my computer again just to check it out.
I know there was a couple things that I was going to look into, and if people do use those services, maybe I will. One was Spotify. I don't know how many listeners. I mean, I know there's a lot of listeners on Spotify, but I think it's pretty exclusive for...
Right, how many people are listening to our podcast on Spotify.
Right, but it might be worth sending a few emails to. And another service is how many people use Plex? I know Plex is a big... it's a server service that you can have for your home, but it also has live TV and things like that.
That Plex. Oh yeah. No, I didn't. I'm like Plex. I don't think I've heard of that, but yeah, no, that Plex. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
But they just, I think within the last couple, maybe the last couple of months, they started introducing podcasts.
Can we get on Tidal? The one that Jay-Z and Beyonce own? So that
next time they drop a surprise album like they did last weekend?
I thought that went under, or was that Milk?
No, Tidal's still around.
Is it? Yeah, no, Milk's done. Milk got absorbed back into Slacker. But I loved Milk. Milk was awesome. But no, Tidal, Jay-Z and Beyonce dropped that surprise album, so everybody was going into Tidal. So if we got on there, then maybe we would have gotten a lot of, incidental traffic. Like that time that we got 250,000 downloads in a day. We're like, what the hell is going on? Why are we so popular? Did Moniz kill the president or something? What's going on? And as it turns out, it was because we got featured on the front page of iTunes. Did I just get our show flagged by the Secret Service?
Maybe. Yeah.
I think I did.
Yeah.
If it wasn't before, it definitely is now. But don't worry. Moniz is harmless. He sounds way more dangerous than he really is. He's also kind of lazy. So they don't have anything to worry about.
No.
He's all
talk.
If the zombie apocalypse comes, he'll pick them off one by one. But
right, I'm going over his house, and it's not just because I live next door.
Right, he doesn't have. I don't think he has strong enough convictions that you have to worry about him. I think he's pretty passive guy on a lot of things. But anyway, so yeah, that's why we got that huge explosion, was because we were featured on iTunes. But now we're gonna get numbers like we never got before, because did you see the big news this week, Matt?
I did not know.
So that we're on the Dark Matter Radio Network, Dark Matter Digital Network.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I think I did hear about this.
So that is a way that a lot of people listen to the show. A lot of people enjoy the show on Dark Matter. They rebroadcast us, I believe, on Tuesdays, 7:30 Eastern, so 4:30 Pacific time. Which, by the way, not to complain, Keith. I know that you've been getting a lot of slings and arrows over the last couple of months, but pretty much the standard accepted time schedule to post is Eastern time. I'm not just trying to use my East Coast snobbishness to tell you you should make everything Eastern time because I'm from the East Coast, but usually that's what people list times as. Mm-hmm. So it always screws me up when I'm trying to listen to shows on Dark Matter. I'm like, I gotta check that show out, and then it's like, no, I can't. I'm 3 hours early or 3 hours late. Right. However it works out. But anyway, so we air on Dark Matter, but now we're joining a new online network, and I'm very excited about this one.
I heard big things about this.
We will be on kingdomofnyradio.com. The Spookacy. That's what we are, because kingdomofnyradio.com is the real legacy.
Right.
We are the Spookacy. Bart L. has allowed us to join his mega network, which, by the way, if you have not been listening to, you really need to go check it out, because I don't know what he's doing, but the sound is incredible. He's playing a lot of music,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of original Art Bell bumper music, and the sound is just amazing. Even on my crappy computer speakers in the newsroom, I was listening the other night as I was finishing up my stories. Amazing. So I can only imagine how great we'll sound when we are on kingdomofnightradio.com.
Yeah.
And I think I just earned some BART coins for us too. So that'll be good. I just want to let everybody know really quickly, and a little bit of an apology too before we get into it with our guest tonight, that I know I said we were going to be on the air last week, and then we had that spot decision not to broadcast the show. That was because I was at the Middleborough Paracon during the day, and my assumption was because we had, I had a paranormal event the night before at the Smith Harris House in Niantic, Connecticut, that ended at 1 a.m., and then I had a 2-hour ride home. So I knew I wasn't even going to be having the possibility of climbing into bed till at least 3 a.m. And then I had to be at the Middleborough Paracon by 10 a.m. So my thought and feeling was, if they ask me to help out with the ghost hunt for the Middleborough Paracon, there's no way I'm going to have the energy to be able to do it, because I'm just going to be dragging ass by that point. And almost going in to do Spooky South Coast will be more relaxing, because when you're on a paranormal investigation, you're expending a lot of energy. And we can argue about whether or not, ghosts are there and drawing from your energy, which is a possibility. But even beyond that, you're going to just be drained because you're running up and down stairs, carrying a lot of equipment around. It was hot and muggy that day, so that's going to zap out some of your energy. So I just figured by the time, 5:30, 6 o'clock rolled around and the day part of the Paracon was over, I would be wiped out. I would go home, take a couple hours nap, come in and do Spooky South Coast, go home, go to bed again. But when they asked, they said, hey, we're doing a ghost hunt at the Oliver House. After this, do you want to take part? I can't say no. I can't say no to the Oliver House because it's that amazing. First of all, just from a historical perspective, being able to walk through the same home that Ben Franklin stayed in, to put your hand on the closet door and open the same closet that Ben Franklin found the letters from the Oliver family to the British monarchy, basically spying on the revolution and giving away all the secrets to the British crown. To be able to be in that house at any given time is amazing enough. But the fact that every time I go there, the paranormal stuff just goes insane. And I told the story before on the air about the last time I was there, the picture that lifted itself up off the wall and came smashing down at the end of the night after the event was over, and it was just the staff of the house and myself hanging around talking in one room. In the other room, this picture just comes smashing down, and the way that the picture was hung up, it had only been hung up earlier that day, the nail was at a 45-degree angle pointing up, coming out of the wall, and then the picture itself had one of those sawtooth brackets that was clamped onto that nail, so it had to get up and over the nail head and be pushed up. Anyway, long story short, something had to go underneath that photo and flip it to get it off. So that alone was pretty intense. But this last Saturday, we were in the basement. And the basement of the Oliver House has an area that was part of the Underground Railroad. There's a little hidden area there where they would hide people. And then there's another smaller area in the basement that's a hiding spot as well. Every time we go into that basement, weird things happen. But we had something like 30 people running around this house, which isn't too many people, but it's a lot of people. So I said to some folks, I said, why don't we go down to the basement away from everybody else and just go sit there and shut off all of our devices. And people always, are excited when they go on a ghost hunt because they just spent $200 on the latest piece of tech. They have this, this new app that they want to try, whatever it is. They've always got all this gear that they want to show up and use. And then here's me saying, well, we're going to go sit in the basement in the dark for 20 minutes and not turn anything on. because I think it's important to attune yourself to your surroundings. And also, like Jeff Belanger always says, you know, you could have every piece of ghost gear in your hand looking at it and nothing's coming up on it, but there could be a ghost standing right in front of your face and you wouldn't know it because you're too busy looking down at your devices in your hands. So I just want everybody to kind of tune themselves into the energy, the spirit, no pun intended, of the house. And also that's a chance to kind of see, okay, I know every 10 minutes, you know, the heat's going to come on, or, you know, we're going to hear the battery backup for the cable connection is going to beep, or whatever it might be that's part of a house that you have to kind of tune yourself into. So we're all down there in the dark, and without fail, this happens every time I go to this house, you get shadow people activity happening in that basement. And Matt, I know a lot of people that have never experienced shadow people are convinced that it's in people's heads, or it's their eyes not adjusting correctly to the dark, or what have you. Mm-hmm. And I can see that. I can understand that when you're staring across a dark room and you're seeing shadows moving. It's easy for your eyes to play tricks on you. But what about when you can see and feel a three-dimensional shadow mass walking between you and the person standing right next to you?
I mean, that's pretty interesting.
It's a lot. I mean, it would basically be, the only way that I could explain it would be for a person to actually walk between us, but then have to disappear.
I mean, when you think about paranormal activity, like the first thing you think of is, what did you see? What did someone else see? What did they see? But I mean, you have, I don't know how many senses. Like, it's more than 5 senses now, I think. Don't they say there's more than 5? But you have a bunch of other senses that you could use for paranormal to kind of pick up on your surroundings. So, like, the fact that you see something and that's just dismissed.
Yeah, it's this is pretty intense when this happens. I mean, and you can tell when somebody is there, when there's a physical presence there, and then it disappears. It actually freaked one girl out. She had to run out screaming because something actually made a noise in the other part of the basement, came kind of running by her, touched her, like kind of forced its way like past her, and then ran toward the staircase and just disappeared into the staircase. Then at another point, so, you know, as I said, there's a lot of people walking around in the upstairs part of the house. We had probably maybe a dozen people downstairs, probably a little less, maybe about 9 or 10. And what would end up happening inevitably is people would want to know what was going down in the basement, so they would open the door to the basement and they would start walking down the stairs with a flashlight. And we would yell to people, you know, if you're not coming downstairs, can you turn off the light? Because every time somebody would turn on the staircase light or shine a flashlight down the stairs, that means your eyes have to take another couple of minutes to adjust to the darkness for us to continue doing what we're doing. So every time the door would open or a light would shine, we would yell, can you, up or down, close the door. And at one point, the light started coming down the stairs like somebody had a flashlight, and we saw the legs of the person come down the stairs, and then they were gone.
Wow.
Yeah. And I don't exaggerate when it comes to paranormal stuff, because I don't need to. I've had enough stuff happen that I don't need to exaggerate. But I saw disembodied legs walk down the staircase and then disappear.
I've heard some people, when they describe shadow figure or shadow people encounters, where when they shine a flashlight into it, it's almost devoid of light. It's just a black mass. It doesn't go through it. It's just, is that did that happen? Is that accurate?
Yeah, it's
for the most part?
that's you could. I've actually done that. We had it happen at the Fearing Tavern last year.
The light just disappears into it, not through it.
It absorbs that light,
right?
And it's like throwing, something small down a huge dark hallway. It's just gone. And that's what happened at the Fearing Tavern last year, when we were not entirely sure that it was a shadow person we were seeing, and maybe somebody else's shadow. But that was what kind of tipped us off that we were dealing with something that had mass, is that when we shine the light on it, it just, instead of disappearing, because if you shine a light on a shadow, it should wash out the shadow.
Right.
And this did not do that. This stayed a three-dimensional solid figure, and the light was just gone. But we didn't try that in the Oliver house last weekend because we kept all the lights off.
So maybe we're wrong calling them shadow people. Maybe we should call them, I don't know.
Yeah, because it's you're right. It's not a shadow. It's almost like it's antimatter. And then the other thing that was happening in the basement was that we were getting these mysterious bars of light that were showing up out of nowhere. And when I say a bar of light, it's like, so like let's just say everybody has like most people have a fluorescent light over their kitchen sink.
Right.
That little short, like whatever it is, like, foot long fluorescent bulb.
I don't know where you get them, but they're in every home.
Oh, I know where you get them. You have to get them at Walmart or Home Depot or whatever.
Yeah. I never see like that.
No,
the kitchen light aisle.
They're there. I know that because I've had to replace mine like 3 times now.
Yeah.
Because you cannot not have that light. Some nights that's the only light you have on in your entire house. So anyway, and I remember the last time I got one, I was on my motorcycle and I was trying to drive home with a light bulb sticking out of one of my saddlebags. That was not fun. But anyway, because like you can only go so fast. If you go too fast, you're going to lose the light bulb. So anyway, it was like one of those lights, but was vertical instead of horizontal. Floating, free floating in the middle of the basement. Maybe about 6 inches to a foot off the floor, maybe a little higher. It's hard to judge in the dark, but just floating. And it was like all of a sudden it would just be there and it would move a couple of feet and then it would disappear. And it was that wide and that long. Just this bar of light. It happened 3 times while we were in the basement. And so later on, we went upstairs and we were talking to Christy, who is the person who's in charge of the paranormal stuff that goes on at the Oliver house. Well, in charge of the events and everything. She doesn't, make the ghosts show up.
Right.
But so we were talking to her about that. She's the one who is always there investigating. And I said, you ever have any weird light things that happen? She's like, oh yeah, we have this weird bar of light that will show up in different parts of the house just out of nowhere. I was like, well, that's intriguing. So, hey, who knows? Maybe we'll go back there in the fall for another event. We did a fundraiser last year for the Oliver house, Mysterious Middleborough. Maybe we'll bring it back this fall because the house is amazing. The town hall is active. The Masonic Lodge across from the town hall is active. So it's certainly worth spending the night. And just real quick, a question popped up in the chat room asking what I think about Whitley Strieber begging for another $15,000 on top of the $22,000 he already got for his website. Listen, I don't know all that much about websites, but I'm pretty sure that you don't need $15,000 to protect your website.
No.
I know that because I work here in the newsroom, and we always have the commercials for like LifeLock and all that stuff. $9.99 a month. We have security on our website. The Legend Trips website has security on it. I think I pay $200 a year for that security. So I don't know what kind of security you need. Listen, I don't want to blast somebody on the show, but there's a reason why we haven't had Whitley Strieber back on. I'm skeptical.
Yeah.
Very skeptical. His books terrified me as a kid. Communion, to this day, I still cannot look at the cover of that book. But I'm very skeptical. So there's that. And like I said, I normally would not blast somebody on the show.
Right. And being skeptical is, you're not totally saying anything negative.
What I'm saying is just don't send him money. Because I can't imagine that there's a need for $15,000 to protect the website. If somebody told me that I had to have $15,000 to protect SpookySouthCoast.com, I'd be like, well, I guess we don't have a website anymore.
I mean, if the person was transparent and they said, like, if I'm providing content and I need $15,000 a year to keep everything going and running smoothly with maybe
right. Well, if $15,000 was going into content,
right.
So if it was like we're going to hire a videographer to produce videos, and we're going to have if not everybody is lucky enough to do a show out of a radio studio like we are, so if you had to go out and buy some of this equipment or go out and buy cameras or whatever,
stuff costs money. I understand.
But if you have to pay for music licenses, if you want to run music. But I guess the way around that is don't pay for the music license and just upload it anyway. Because that seems that's got to be what's happening. Hey, I wonder if we can start putting music into the show just for kingdomofnightradio.com.
Maybe.
Bart L does have the magic license.
He does. I think it would screw up our other services, though.
Okay, I apologize. I rambled on a little bit and I didn't get to our guests. So, all right, let me let everybody know about you. Peter Haviland is Lone Star Spirit's lead investigator. He's the president and is an advanced certified clinical hypnotherapist. He has had success with clients in haunting cases and removing fears, anxieties, and psychological triggers that have caused either possible poltergeist activity or hypersensitivity due to subconscious triggering mechanisms. Pete is co-founding member of the Paranormal Research Organization with Lloyd Auerbach, an investigator with the Office of Paranormal Investigations, American Ghost Society representative for Northwest Texas, and owner of the Supernatural Radio Network. Peter has over 25 years of field experience in the paranormal and is a founding member of LSSPI, and he is joining us now on Spooky South Coast. Good evening, Peter. Again, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, we're glad to talk with you, especially with credentials like that. There's a lot of places that we can go with this conversation. I'm very excited to talk about some of these triggering mechanisms and some of this other stuff as well, but I want to say, too, that we've been doing the show for a long time. And one of the early guests that we tried to get on the show, even in the very, very early days, was Lloyd Auerbach. And I think we've had him on once, Matt, I believe, right? And here it is, 12 years later that we started the show. I still don't think the guy's had a Saturday night off since then.
Yeah, he's a busy guy. If he's not doing his normal everyday job, he's either lecturing or traveling or doing something.
Oh, well, I also think that when you are, that much in demand too, you've got to think that he's got people that are always hounding him, saying, "Hey, can you join us for this investigation? Hey, can you come with us to this?" And hey, so even when you think you're going to have a night off, somebody's probably calling you and coming up with something else for you to do.
I'm sure, and I know he still takes my phone calls, so he's busy.
Well, I do think too that you're a pretty busy guy yourself too. So you've probably got your hands full taking a look at just some of the paranormal activity I know of in Texas. It seems like that is a hot spot for weird phenomena, not just ghosts, but all kinds of strange things.
Yeah, we got Bigfoot down here. We got UFOs. You name it, we pretty much got it down here.
What is? Obviously, you're dealing with hauntings, but does your organization also look into some of these other strange things as well?
No, unfortunately, we got all we can do with residentials.
Understandable.
I usually get Daryl Sims to take care of the UFO stuff, and Ken Gerard to do the crypto stuff for us.
So, with the ghost phenomena that happens there, with the paranormal phenomena that happens there, would you say that there is a reason to believe that there is, like we have the Bridgewater Triangle here in Massachusetts, would you call that, some type of a vortex area where all these weird things are happening?
I would say so, and the reason being is that just from the discoveries that you've had in the area and everything that seems to be almost the same. So I would. What it is, I couldn't tell you. I have no clue. But yeah, the area seems like it would be some type of a vortex.
As long as it's keeping you busy, there's no reason to really try to solve it and figure it out. But I'm very fascinated by places like that where there can be, because there's a lot of trees in the paranormal. There's not a lot of places where we can take all those trees and see that whole entire forest. And I think
Right.
Texas, especially your area of Texas, is one area where you can actually start to see that forest.
Oh yes. Oh yes.
So then this is probably something that you have been doing for quite a while now. I mean, I've seen your name around for a long time, and not to make you feel old, but you've probably been checking this stuff out for quite some time.
Yeah, I've been doing it. It's been over 30 years now, and I tell you what, I get so many I get so many emails and phone calls about questions on stuff. I just had one today. Some lady that's in Omaha is claiming that she thinks she's possessed. So I had to hand that one over to the priest that I work with to see what he can figure out on that one. It didn't seem like when I was assessing her, she didn't seem like that there was anything happening as far as it being a possession. It seemed like more of a, I don't know, more of a faith issue. I think 'cause she was concerned about her faith, and also that she had done something with what is it, a curandera, with Mexican witch, and I'm thinking that with that subconsciously she might be manifesting something.
Wow. I mean, I don't like to ask the question of,
Sure.
because you hear it too much in interview, and it's lazy interviewing, I think, a lot of times too. But
I'm an open book, man. You can ask me whatever. If I don't know, I'll tell you I don't know.
No, it's just I hate to start a conversation with, so tell us how you got involved in all this stuff, Peter. But I have to ask, did the credentials come after you started looking into this stuff, or were you already a hypnotherapist beforehand?
Yeah, the credentials came way after. I think that everybody that has that's in this study has had something happen to them that would push them towards the study itself. Mine is that I was 12 years old in my parents' house, and I was watching a monster movie, and the room went cold, and my dog sat up and turned around and was looking up the stairs on our house, and I saw my grandfather walking down the stairs. And I love my grandfather, but he passed the year before. When I saw him, there wasn't any sound, there wasn't any he wasn't really that fluid. It was kind of like a jerky motion, not like you see in the movies, but I don't exactly know how to describe it. And he looked solid. He looked solid to a point. And when he came down the stairs, he made a left turn, and believe it or not, went into our hall closet, which had a big medallion that he brought over from Italy that hung in two of the houses that he built in New York. So it was that point that I kind of figured that it was his property, and he was kind of walking towards what he knew. And at 12 years old, I mean, you can't get really a whole lot deeper than that. So I just started reading everything I could. Hans Holzer was a big was a big writer at the time. D. Scott Rogo, Peter Underwood. I just read everything I could on haunted houses and ghosts, and I would go into school and shoot for a while. They called me the Ghost Boy, because you couldn't find me you couldn't find me anywhere without a ghost book, and I would always be sitting down and reading. I got into high school, and I got real lucky with my psych prof. He let me write on parapsychological things. I just had to kind of keep it within a basic realm of what he wanted to have done, but put a twist on it. And he helped me hone my craft there. And then I got into college, and same thing with psychology. Just got into it, and learned how what our mind does and how we react and things. And I got into hypnotherapy because I wanted to work with with police on cold case files and missing people and children. And so I had gone to the Path Foundation, and I got my certification from Dr. Ed Martin, and learned from him far more than I've ever learned anywhere else. How the mind reacts and what our mind does during times of stress, and when you remove things from the subconscious, how things can change. And I learned at that point, just having studied a lot of time with poltergeist, because poltergeist just fascinate me. And I had learned by working with clients that I could remove fears, and I could remove stress. And I've had hauntings stop, and I've had them stop in their home. I had one lady at one time move into a home that she had just divorced her husband, and he was very controlling. And the reason why she left is because he would call her from work and say, why did he had all these cameras all over the house, and he would just berate her. Why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? So she finally said, the heck with it, and she left and moved into her own home. But she was very hypersensitive because of everything that she had been through with him. So when I went over to the home, and after having assessed her and found out about the hypersensitivity, I placed her under there, and had removed all the causes for her being scared of living in her home, and things stopped then too. So I was like, oh, okay, so I know where to go with this. So I've worked with a lot of folks in different hauntings and stuff, helping them between dealing with things, or raising their psychic awareness, or just removing things that would have poltergeist activity stop. Now, I could tell you that from everything I've seen so far, a lot of the stuff, most of the major stuff, that if it isn't place memory, which is like the recorded event that plays over and over again, it's usually stress, some stress or something that has been in their past that that hasn't been corrected with some type of talking to a psychologist or psychiatrist or counselor, and so that you still have those triggers, and with the right person or the right sense, can trigger that issue that you had way back, and it can physically manifest. Well, and I'm sorry.
A question came up in the chat room
Sure.
while you're speaking. If you can stop people from having a reaction to what's going on. I mean, you can, as a psychotherapist, as a hypnotherapist, I mean, you can train somebody to be disgusted by the taste of a cigarette, for example. You can have them, when they put it in their mouth, they can say, "Oh, this is gross. I don't want this anymore." But that doesn't get rid of.
And I've done that before.
But that doesn't get rid of the root desire to smoke, right? That doesn't get rid of the craving.
Well, yeah. Well, see, what I normally do is, I mean, I can place that, the bad taste. If you're having an issue with chocolate, I can tell you that it tastes however you want it to taste, so you don't eat it. Mm-hmm. But my thoughts is that if you don't correct the behavior, you're putting a Band-Aid on it, and it's still there.
Right.
So so that's why I do more of an assessment and find out exactly what it is, or if I have to place them under, and go back and look at different times in their childhood that they can remember things. I look for the triggers in there, and I try to take care of it at that point. Does that answer your question?
Right, exactly, because it's, you want to get rid of what the root issue is, because otherwise, like you said, putting a Band-Aid on it might solve, and we see this happen all the time with paranormal investigators, especially when people go in, they're not trained well enough, they go in and take on residential cases where, they might be able to get things to subside a little bit, but it doesn't solve the issue, which basically the only real way to solve the issue is you have to get the person that lives there to understand what is going on. It can't just be teaching them if you do this or do that, or tell the ghost to stop doing this or whatever. You need to kind of find a way to make that relationship work at its very root.
Right, and I spend a lot of time with my clients when I work with them. Normally, in the position I have within my team is that being the parapsychologist, I usually I'm the one that does the interviews, and I'm usually the one that sits and I notice things. I look at the family, how it's reacting during, whatever's going on while we're doing things. I pay attention to behaviors and things like that. So, what triggers off what, and if this one does this, it ticks this one off, and something might happen after that. So, I spend a lot of time after I do the assessment to explain in much detail as I can for them to understand. And then what I usually do too is I provide them reading material, because sometimes it's too much to grasp at one time. So if you start looking at some PDF files and some links, they can go back at their leisure to understand. And I found that helps out a lot too, because the more you get to know how things work, the more you understand, and things just tend to dissipate because of the understanding. Not so much that you're running anything out of the house, but if it's a psychological thing, if they understand how their mind is working and how they're perceiving things, and they learn it, then sometimes it just goes away.
And I've heard that happen, more often than not, where people will have phenomena going on that they don't understand. They'll call somebody in to help them figure out whether or not it's something paranormal in nature. And then once they just get that answer of one way or another, obviously if it turns out that it's not paranormal, that's a lot easier to digest. Right. But if somebody comes in and says, I think you do have something going on here, sometimes that's just enough for them to better understand it, to not be afraid of it, and then that fear stops feeding into it.
Exactly. Sometimes just to giving the validation of, hey, they heard it too. Okay, thanks. I've had that happen too. And I was watching you speak a little bit before we got on, and it sounds like that you've had a lot of experiences as far as seeing things as well. Mm-hmm. So you kind of understand what I'm talking about.
Yeah, that's the other thing too, is if you're a person, and you probably see this doing residential cases all the time, if you're a person that understands the paranormal world and knows what to look for, then and it takes a lot more for it to affect you. You might experience it, but it takes a lot more for it to get to the point where it unnerves you, so you can deal with it a little bit more. So sometimes you're going in there under the guise of being an investigator or a researcher, but you're actually going in there to be more of an educator, and to kind of arm the person with enough information that all of a sudden the unknown doesn't stay unknown, and it becomes far less scary.
Exactly.
It'd be a lot easier if people would just buy a book that you wrote, but
I'm working on it right now.
If you go to the house, maybe they make you chocolate chip cookies, so there's always that too.
I've gone to houses before, and I've had folks make meals for us while we're there.
Wow.
And it's always appreciated. We don't ask for it, but it's always appreciated for that. And
here's my thing. I can't go into residential cases. We've done a few things here and there, but I don't like going into somebody else's house. It's just weird to me. And so I don't even like it. Like when you go to somebody's house, they're having a yard sale, and they're like, oh, all the stuff is in the garage. Like, no, I'll just stay out here. So I always can appreciate when people can go in and handle the residential cases, because you are putting yourselves into that person's life completely, which I guess you have to be able to understand what it is that they're going through.
Yeah, and there's been times when I've worked with poltergeist cases that I've actually moved into the home for a few days at a time, because in all honesty, when you're working a case and you're working something that that they're experiencing, they're 24/7. All right, so they're going to see a lot more stuff and experience a lot more stuff than I would. So if I could place myself in there for a small amount of time to see if I can get just a 10% of what they're experiencing, I can understand a little bit more, and it puts them more at ease too, because they're seeing me go through it with them.
And the other part of it too is with people having these experiences and going through this, as you said, it's just being there alongside them and them seeing the way that you react to it. And the way that's one of the things that I try to caution people that go in and do residential cases all the time is you have to realize that when you go in there and you're there, you're basically, like a paranormal security guard for these people. You can't flinch. You can't get freaked out by something, because you getting freaked out means that person might never want to go back into their own home again.
Well, yeah. I mean, if the answer man's stumped, who are they going to ask?
Exactly. But I mean, you can be stumped. It's okay to say I don't
Oh yeah.
know,
Oh yeah.
but you can't run out
I've seen
screaming.
things I can't explain. I'm not saying that I know everything. I don't. There's no way for me to know everything.
But the minute you, and I've seen it happen with investigators where I've said to them, they've taken off on an investigation and said, I can't go back down there. I can't go. Like, no, you have to, because you're the last line of defense for these people. You have to be able to go in there and say, whatever this is, I know it can't hurt me. I know it can't. It's very limited in its reach. It's very limited in its power. The most it can do is unnerve me, and I can't let it do that.
Right. Exactly.
Is there is there a trick that you have to do for your fellow investigators? Do you have to kind of hypnotize them so that they, they don't freak out?
I've actually hypnotized investigators to bolster their courage if I have to. I've also had them. I've also talked with them, and I told them, I said, look, that you've chosen to do this, whether it's whether it's just for fun or if you're a serious researcher. And I remind them, this is what you're here for. This is why you chose this. This is what you want to experience. So I after I tell them this, I tell them to go ahead and get your composure and feel so you feel comfortable. And I'm not going to place anybody in somewhere that they're uncomfortable with, but I like for them to kind of settle in.
But
and I was listening to you talking about sitting in the basement or and with the lights off so you can get to feel the room, feel the area. I agree totally with that. You have to know where you are. You have to have, your energy is also mixing with whatever energy that might be there. So the more that your energy is there, the more it gets used to it. Maybe you might have seen those feet coming down the stairs a little longer. Maybe you don't know if it was an energy thing or if it just if it has any feeling saying, well, he's weirding me out and he leaves. I mean, you don't know. So
Well, I mean, I guess too, like there's the benefit of being able to have that effect on your fellow investigators, being able to, maybe you can help raise their, for lack of a better term, their kind of their vibrational status, their get them a little bit more up into the beta waves so they can perceive this stuff through hypnosis. You can probably get people closer to that, but then isn't the opposite side of that too? You have to be careful not to put somebody in a state where they could be highly susceptible to suggestion.
I make sure that I before I place anybody into hypnosis, I explain to them what I'm going to do. I explain to them what it's going to do, and I want them to be comfortable with it. I just don't place anybody under without knowing exactly what I'm doing. So when I work with clients for just PTSD and things like that, when I do the assessment, and as I'm writing the my session. I go over the session after I'm done with it, so they know exactly what's being done, they know exactly what we're going to do, and they know exactly how the session's going to go. No surprises, and that's also a good comfort level. That I've found that the more they know about what you're going to do, the easier that they will go under.
I mean, I've never been hypnotized. I've never been put into that type of a scenario or a suggestion. I've always said, I'd be open to the possibility, but at the same time, when I go on an investigation, just as an example, this came up, it was last Friday night when I was in Connecticut. I'm talking to some of the tour guides for the Smith Harris house. And one of them said to me, dead serious, have you ever investigated while taking psychedelics? I said, well, no.
I don't have folks do that.
No, because
I don't have to do that.
I've never taken a psychedelic, and I probably wouldn't because I just don't have that much time. But it made me think that it's not entirely a
Well,
bad idea to have that happen because
under controlled circumstances with a doctor, I could see maybe experimenting with that, but just going into somebody's
right, not into somebody's home, no,
somebody's place of business or home, you don't need anybody tripping out in there. I mean, that's that's my responsibility, and if anything happens, I'm responsible for it. So,
but
I can't do that.
I do think, though, that to some degree we kind of put ourselves in that same mindset when we are investigating. Obviously, we're not being controlled chemically by something, that we're putting into our bodies, but we are changing our psychological outlook when we go into these places. And I think the effect is the same. It's obviously a lot easier to take yourself out of that position than if you deem it dangerous, but it is interesting. And although I don't take psychedelics, I know enough people that do, that we might try that experiment sometime in the future. I know Moniz would be happy to try whatever we could. My co-host Matt Moniz, who's not here tonight, would be happy to try that. But I would. I mean,
just make sure that they know.
I mean, I would like to just see kind of what the effect is on them. I've done podcasts while drunk, if that counts. That's a pretty famous episode of Spooky South Coast. So when you are,
I'm not gonna even ask.
Which, by the way, we're going to have to do another. We say this every summer. We're going to do another backyard podcast this year. As you're getting ready to put somebody into this state. So say you're going on an investigation. You have somebody that's with you who is a new investigator who is joining you for the first time, and they're apprehensive about going into this. They're concerned about going into this. Do you think that an investigator that has that mentality, that has that stress level, can that actually be beneficial on an investigation?
Yes, it actually can. But I don't want anybody thinking that all with my the investigators I work with, I place them all under and they're like robots. I don't do that at all. But I mean, if somebody wants to be placed under because of they need the courage, or they're scared or something like that, I have no problem doing that. And it only helps them because they can see, okay, I handled that well. So they might next time might not want me to place them under. Maybe they might want to try it on their own. But I also have folks shadowing, the more experienced investigators too. So it's not like that they're going to be in an area that they're by themselves. There was somebody else that have had experiences. So, they don't feel that bad when they're going and working in a place.
And I apologize to anybody that's listening. I fixed the echo problem. That was on my end. That was that I had the YouTube open on my computer. But if anybody just heard me pop into the network, I noticed the phone lines were lighting up, so I just want to make sure it wasn't people that are listening on the radio calling to tell us that we were off the air. So I just popped it onto the radio for a minute to see if we were okay. But we do have the phone lines open if anybody wants to call in. 508-996-0500. Peter, we have somebody on the line if you want to take a call. It may not be related to what we're talking about at all, so just as a warning.
If I don't know, I'll just if I don't know, I'll just tell you I don't know.
Well, chances are we'll probably end up cutting him if it's who it might be. But let's see.
Okay.
Good evening. You're on Spooky South Coast with our guest Peter Haviland.
Yes, I'm only calling because I like to listen to your show. Although you're getting two different programs in the last hour, I don't know what it's going to do now because I turned it off for a minute. But you're getting two different shows in, you have two programs.
On the radio?
Yes.
You're listening on the radio? Okay, yeah, we're not even broadcasting on the radio right now.
Oh, okay, but it's on there.
So you're hearing us go, oh, that's why you're hearing...
And you're hearing something else, yeah.
You're hearing the guest over... See, this is what happens. I do this every time. Thank you for the heads up.
No problem. Thank you.
Which would you rather hear, the Red Sox or Spooky South Coast?
South Coast. I'd rather listen to that. I'm not crazy for sports too much.
Are the Red Sox over?
Yeah, they are. Yes, they are.
All right. We can fix that problem right now. We're going to go on the radio.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you. All right. So that explains why the phone lines were lighting up, because I forgot to push one of the other. Why do they keep letting me come in here and do this show?
They like you.
So welcome back to Spooky South Coast. We are broadcasting now over the WBSM, in addition to broadcasting on Spooky TV at SpookySouthCoast.com. So now everybody can hear us over the radio. And we are talking with our guest, Peter Haviland. He is a hypnotherapist, a parapsychologist, a paranormal researcher. We're talking with him about his approach to investigations and how exactly he utilizes his abilities as a hypnotherapist on paranormal investigations. And we also got him to hypnotize me and make me cluck like a chicken, but you guys missed that part because we were just on YouTube at that point.
You're going to have to watch out for those brown eggs.
we just want to give that little tease so that people go and check out the beginning of the podcast. So if anybody wants to call in again, 508-996-0500. Now that you can hear the full show on WBSM, it will make way more sense that you can hear both sides of the conversation. So in looking at some of these residential cases that you go to, what is more often than not, because I think things have changed a little bit. When we started doing the show, 12 years ago, we would often have people that would say that they had paranormal activity going on. You would show up at their house. It would turn out to be something else. In the early days of ghost hunters being on TV, we would see a lot of cases that they would go and take care of where people thought it was paranormal. It turned out not to be. Are you seeing a change in the way that people understand the paranormal now, so that now when you go out on a case, on a residential case, are we seeing a higher percentage of actual paranormal activity happening, or is it still a lot of misperception by the homeowner, by the resident or the business owner, thinking that it's something else?
Well, I don't mean to sound like a hater, but when the paranormal shows came out, I mean, yeah, it was great for to put a spotlight on what researchers like us do. It was great. But the problem is that when you start doing stuff like that, and you're looking at these shows, they're entertainment purposes. I mean, drama sells soap. So they're going to do whatever they need to do to make sure people tune in next week. Now, I've never been on an investigation. I'm sure you haven't either. That is 4 hours. I mean, I've been at places for 12 hours, sat in a corner and watched spiders. I mean, but you can't put that on TV. So, so a lot of folks, when they have stuff happening in their homes, there is a lot of misidentification, because they'll think, hey, Zach did this in this attic, and he got this, and this is happening at my house, so this must be what Zach's dealing with. So then I get an email saying, well, I've got a demon in my home, and that's, and the first question I ask him is that, well, how do you know it's a demon? Well, he told me his name. Okay. Well, you don't have a demon then, because normally, you have an exorcist that uses the ritual to tire out if there is a demon there, so he can expel them. So they don't just give up their name. So if they're saying that there's a name, there's a different issue besides what they're thinking it is. But and I have had a lot of folks get real mad at me though when I do stuff like that, because they honestly think what they're seeing on TV is what we do. And for the most part, it might be 50% maybe.
Right.
But the other stuff, I mean, it's all smoke and mirrors. And like I said, I don't mean to sound like a hater, but what gets me is that you were talking about earlier about investigators going into a house that that didn't have any background and things like that. There's a lot of that goes on right now. They watch the TV shows. They put a team together. They go out and they go into people's homes, which it's their livelihood. I mean, that's where they live. Nobody wants to live in the spooky house in the corner, But they come in. They don't know what they're doing. They don't refer out. They don't call people in, and then you have people that are more wigged out, than when they first got there. Folks need to understand what they're doing, how things work, and know about what's know how things go before they even step into it. I mean, heck, some of them don't even know who Harry Price is.
Oh, that drives me crazy. I've often got into that with people on social media, even on their show before, where people will talk about the groundbreaking investigators of today. They'll worship Zach Bagans, but they have no idea who Harry Price is. I'm like, if it wasn't for Harry Price, none of us would be around, because he's the guy that made the media pay attention to the paranormal.
Well, so did Houdini. Houdini used to go out and call out a lot of these mediums.
Right, and part of that was the fact that people like to say, look at what Houdini did. He was trying to discredit what went on, but what he really did was he laid the foundation for us to be able to add a lot of the debunking into what people were doing. Because in the 1800s, during the spiritualism era, when you had the Ghost Club show up, and when you had the Society for Psychical Research show up, and you had all these different organizations, they were looking to disprove some of these claims, but really they wanted to believe that this stuff was real. And Houdini was able to kind of flip that script a little bit to say, well, okay, I really want it to be real, but it's not. So it gave us that opposite perspective.
Right, and it's a mindset, as you're saying. When you go into a place, you don't want to try to find the data that supports a haunting. You want to go in there to find out what's going on, to take it off the list, so you know what you're dealing with, so you can concentrate on what the event is. And I frustrate people when I say that, because they're saying, well, the first thing I do is I go in and get an EVP. I said, well, why? You don't even know that there's something there. You don't even know what's going on in the home structurally, physically, electrically, or anything. You're just thinking something's going on, and a lot of the EVPs that I hear these days, and it probably might be just my ear, a lot of it sounds like it's very over processed. It's like listening to a robot, and and then they give audio cues saying, well, it says Bob goes to the store. Well, if you tell me it says Bob goes to the store, my ear's going to tune in on it and say, oh yeah, that's what it sounds like.
Right. Well, part of the problem too is, though, and I'm trying to get people away from this. I'm trying to get them away from the overprocessing of the EVPs, because basically what that is that's like when you show me a photo of something, you took a photo somewhere and then you blow it up, and when you blow it up, you pixelate it and you say, can't you see that face right there? Well,
that drives me absolutely
because
wild.
You've totally blown it now out of perspective. And it's the same thing with the overprocessing of the audio now, where you can hear anything in the white noise or even in the static silence, if you're going to blow it up that much, and it's ruining things. I like to hear it when you're on an investigation and somebody comes over and just plays it for you off their recorder, and enough of that happens that I don't need your help in hearing what is there. The problem is it's evidence is, and I shouldn't use the term evidence, I should use the term data, but the data isn't collected for the basis of proving or disproving the haunting in a lot of cases. For a lot of investigators, the data is collected to justify having been there in the first place.
Exactly.
And you're doing a disservice to the investigation and to yourself as an investigator by doing that.
And the people that you're trying to help.
Right. Absolutely. They're having enough stuff go on that they don't need you coming in there and, supposedly having enough stuff going on. They don't need you coming in there and misinterpreting everything else to make them feel better. And a lot of times you won't be doing that. You'll be making them feel worse.
Yeah. And, and then they start getting weirded out that they feel like the house is haunted or demonically possessed or whatever. And now they have all this money tied up into it and they want to move. And, people have now started hearing that it's the creepy house on the corner because everybody and their brothers put it on their website about what they've done. And now these folks have a problem trying to get rid of the house if that's what they want to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the other thing, too, is like people don't realize this. You think that you're going into a house to help them out with their paranormal problems, but 9 times out of 10, their problem isn't paranormal. It's something else going on within the family that you're going to now insert yourself into as, I look at it. You ever see that movie? It's very, very, very obscure movie these days, but the Dennis Leary movie, The Ref, where he's just trying to break into this house to steal something, and he ends up being stuck in this family's drama. That's what you're doing as a paranormal investigator when you take on residential cases.
Well, and you also have to be trained too to deal with people that deal with stress, or or having, if they have a mental issue and stuff, being able to at least see and recognize what it is, so you know how to deal with things, or call somebody that can help you with it. A lot of folks they go in, they read a list down that they think is what they're supposed to do, and they make things worse, man.
Mm-hmm. That's why one of the first. So listen, if you go over somebody's house, you're just going to visit somebody. It's very intrusive. It's very impolite to walk into their bathroom and open up their medicine cabinet and see what kind of drugs they might have in there. However, if you're going in as a paranormal investigator, it's perfectly fine because you need to know that information. That's why I say when people are like, well, I went out and I bought, Hans Holzer's Ghosts, and I went out and I bought this Brad Steiger book, and I bought this Jeff Belanger book, and yeah, all that's great, but did you buy the big book of pills? Because that's what you need more than anything if you're going to be taking on residential cases.
Well, I have an app on my phone that I can look up what pills are and what the
great idea.
effects are against each other. I always have that with me.
So then you don't even, because there should be an intake, and this as a hypnotherapist, there should be an intake for every patient that you're doing. There should be an intake for every client that you're taking on as an investigator, because you need to have an understanding of what you're putting yourself into and what this person is expecting out of you, and if those expectations are realistic.
Well, I have an investigator that's a paramedic. Okay. So if anybody's going to be checking meds, the paramedic is the one to be checking the meds, because he's got an understanding, or a basic understanding of what we're looking for, what things do, and knows how to find the information and at least understand what's going on. Not just everybody can go in and do this. You have to have training. You do. You have to have training.
But unfortunately,
and I don't say that because I'm trying to place myself above anybody. I'm not. I don't do that. But you need to have folks like police officers or psychologists, psychiatrists, counselors, stuff like that know how to deal with people in stress. Especially if you have, I've had cases before that I've had to call in child protection services because of the treatment of one of the children. And I've had to do that. Did I want to do that? No. It breaks my heart when that happens. But you have to know what you're looking at, so you know how to handle things.
If anybody's watching the video, they just saw me kind of giggle a little bit. That's because Bart said in the chat room he is a paramedic. He only treats ghosts. I'm just racking up the Bart coins tonight. But that is absolutely 100% the biggest issue that I have with people taking on residential cases. It's that they are so excited. A lot of these armchair investigators who watch it on TV and 10 seasons of Ghost Adventures is what they consider their training, that they are that excited to have the opportunity to go in there. They don't realize that they might not be the best person to take that investigation, or they might need to call in somebody with some more experience to kind of shadow them, and it's okay to admit that something may be not right for you in that, because it's not about you, it's not about what you're going to experience, it's about whether or not you can help the person that's reaching out to you for help.
And people will think better of you if you do call in somebody that has more experience to walk with you, or you shadow them or whatever, because then they know, okay, they're exactly what you're saying. They care about what I'm going through. It's not an ego thing. It's not it's not a TV thing. They actually want to help, and people appreciate that.
Well, the other thing too with residential cases is. And I want to get into this because your experience with poltergeist cases, I think, fits in perfectly with a lot of what people experience in these hauntings or supposed hauntings.
Okay.
But I got to ask you first, before we get into this and go down that path,
Sure.
What is your definition of a poltergeist haunting? What do you think is going on with a poltergeist haunting?
I think it is a manifestation of an issue with a person that when they're triggered, the subconscious places the energy out into the atmosphere or the environment, and usually when they do that, it has something to do with what happened with the original issue. For instance, there's been cases they've talked about having seen rain or water. And metaphorically, that's depression or sadness. When they talk about fire poltergeist, that's usually anger. If it's like fire on your wife's stuff, then you're mad at your wife for some reason. I mean, it's just it kind of just falls into it. I do believe that the conscious mind can survive death. It's very, very rare, but that is an intelligent haunting when that happens. That's not specific. That's not a poltergeist. Then you have what I was talking about before, place memory. Us having an energy field around us. And during high emotions, happy, bad, sad, whatever. We place that information into the environments that we live in. So our psychic selves pick that up. And, and that's when you have empaths being able to read a room. Sometimes you hear footsteps all the time going up and down the stairs because somebody might have been, upset or whatever the case may be, and so, I mean, there's all these different levels. I just don't tune into the poltergeist, but it just seems like most of the calls that I get, at least 80% of the calls that I get, are related to that. And it doesn't surprise me because of the way that the world is today, and how people are more highly stressed, and a lot of folks have a lot of more issues than either we had in the past, or now it's just becoming more it's becoming accepted now to talk about it.
Before anybody thinks that this is a political comment, since I got blasted for the last show for getting political, because people don't realize that anything that I say politically is just setting up for a joke. I'm never really going to talk politics on this show, unless it's like the politics behind whether or not there's going to be UFO disclosure. That's a different story. But I don't just espouse politics on there. I didn't even do it when I had a show that was general talk. But anyway, but I do think that the climate of the world right now and all of the divisiveness that's going on has worked its way into families and has worked its way in. So there's kids that are against their parents, husbands and wives that are against each other, that are on opposite sides of the discussion, where everything can be fine at home, but then something comes on the news about, children being taken from their parents or any of these stories that have been in the news.
We're under a lot of stressful times right now. I would like to think that these are growing pains, and things will come better from this. I really believe that. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stressful things. Depending on what who you support in politics. Yeah, I mean that's a hot button, man. Was it religion and politics? You never discuss them.
Right, exactly. But those are the things that are feeding into these, just putting that energy out between people living in a home that's only making things worse. Let me tell you a little bit of a personal story. So, and I've talked about this on the show, so it's not like I'm speaking out of school here, but I had an aunt and uncle that owned a haunted house for years. And the activity started and was centered around my female cousin, Amy, who was about 12 or 13 at the time. And she seemed to be
teenage angst, huh?
Yeah, exactly. And that's the way she was. She went from being, she was my aunt treated her like a little girly girl and, wanted her to be the next Shirley Temple and all that kind of stuff. And as she became a teenager, she realized that wasn't really what she was into. So there's a lot of that, coming of age stuff going on. But this activity starts to amp up, and I'm there, I'm experiencing it. I know that paranormal phenomena is taking place, but at the same time, I'm thinking I'm under the guise of, some of this paranormal poltergeist research, I should say, where they're saying, well, it's something that's coming from the living person, and the prepubescent girl is the perfect person to be the conduit for this type of activity. And if there's any kind of drama between them and somebody else in the home, that could be festering in and manifesting itself as paranormal activity. And so for years, I thought that was probably what was going on, which is still fascinating to me. It's still just as fascinating as thinking that it's ghosts. But then the more that I found out the history of the property and of that area and some of the other paranormal phenomena that takes place in other houses on that street, then I don't really know where to go. So which is more likely and plausible in some of these scenarios? Is it people that are causing hauntings, or is it ghosts that are causing hauntings?
Well, then you're getting into different things now. As far as, I mean, different hauntings in different houses. I mean, you can have 2 or 3 different things going on at one time, but when it comes together, it might look like one thing. So, you might have the poltergeist stuff happening with the 12-year-old, and then you might have some place memory happening because of whatever historical thing happened around there, and and then you might have something intelligent if it's reacting to you, but that's when you have to really start drilling into each one to find out exactly which one you're dealing with. It's a pain in the ass. I mean, I'll be honest with you, but it's tedious work, but that needs to be done.
Well, and the other part of it too is one can kind of beget the other. One is only going to serve to amplify the other.
Yeah. Well, if you have, for instance, if you have something intelligent that's in the house that is scaring the 12-year-old, that's going to amp up her angst, and that might be heavier poltergeist activity. That might be something that with the poltergeist activity cues off the intelligent haunting, whatever that might be. Yeah, exactly. And when things like that happen, I like to bring in a medium as a tool, and I like to see if we can get a hold of the energies in the place and find out names, dates, places, and events, researchable information, and see if that helps things out too. When I work with a medium, I know everybody says that you don't tell them what's going on, you just tell them the address and they show up. Well, that's I do that, but I also follow the medium with a camera. The medium is never by herself, so whatever she's reading, I have on film. If something happens while she's in the room, I have something now saying, well, the media was in the room, and what she is doing and what she is saying, is it cueing off the perfume bottle to fall? So it's good to have that data. I don't let the medium go off by herself. Also, because if she starts getting into something that might be intelligent and it starts to stress her, you have to understand and look at what your medium is doing. And if she's under stress, you want to pull her to let her calm down and recenter herself and see if she wants to continue, because some of those energies are really strong. And I've never been with a medium that has ever been hurt by any of the energies, because they're just energies, but their emotions, it stirs up emotions that will bother them that way physically. And I've never had a medium hurt.
I'm not trying to discredit what you were saying, and I'm not trying to cast any aspersions on you, but
no, that's fine.
You do have to kind of trust them and their ability, and kind of let them know their own limits, because it's hard for you, being an outside person and not having their gift, to know exactly when those situations do get out of control. Like to answer that, I have a medium that I've been using for 12 years. So she's the only person I bring out. So you're in tune with.
So I know who she is. I know what she's capable of. I know her tells, and she and I work well together. She knows I want names, dates, places, and events. I don't want to say, well, I got a B word. Is there a B word? I don't want to hear that stuff.
Right.
I want, if you could pull it up, that's great. If you can't, that's fine too. But let's not just. It's a C word. It's okay. I don't want that stuff. That doesn't mean that might not be data, but it's not data that you can research.
Right. You want something a little bit more.
You can put that up to the side and say, okay, she got some of this reading over here, so that might be level B or level C research stuff. But you want to go for the stuff that's it was Bob Thomas, 1823. Okay, let's see where let's see where we can go with that.
Which I think that, if you stay out of the way, that stuff will come. But the only reason I mention that is because one of my usual co-hosts, Stephanie Burke, is a psychic medium. And if I ever tried to, guard over her like that, she'd kick my ass, because when we are on an investigation, she's there to look out for me. She's the one that comes warning to me, come to me to give me warning, saying, you better stop doing what you're doing. Trust me, I know better than you do. And I'm like, okay, yep, all right, fine. And then I usually don't listen anyway. But she has my best interests at heart, and just I'm too stubborn to listen.
And the medium that I use, she has my best she has her best interest at heart too for me as well. And we're constantly talking back and forth. I'll say, oh, are you okay? What can you get more? Can you drill more into what you're seeing here or you're experiencing here? We talk back and forth. It's not just, I'm not like looming over her. I don't do that. I do frustrate her sometimes because she'll ask me questions for clarification, and I want her to pull it. And it's not because I'm trying to be difficult. It's just that if she pulls it, I'm not giving her the answer. And there you can't really question how did she get the information? Did you ask her an open-ended question or a yes or no question? No, she's pulling the information and it's documented.
I'm going to ask you a question, and it's a bit of a loaded question, but feel free to don't hold back at all. And
okay.
That question is, as somebody who has studied this phenomena, as somebody who has put in the time to become a parapsychologist, and I know, working with Lloyd Auerbach, I know how he feels about this situation because I've heard him talk about it for years.
Right.
Are these armchair, weekend warrior paranormal investigators, are they hurting? Are they doing more damage with what they're doing than good with the approach that they're taking?
Well, to answer that question, I mean, I can't say that they're all hurting things because I don't know all the different levels and knowledge levels of who's going out there.
Right.
But for the most part, the folks that don't have any background, at least to know what they're doing, what the history is. I mean, because I'm a firm believer in, you study the past so you can move things forward. So you got to know the history. So, the person that doesn't want to put the time in to, at least understand, the forefathers and why we do things the way we do. And, and look, and take the initiative to go look at, the God helmet. What did it do? What is it? How did it help us? Looking at Dr. Stevenson about, children and past lives, and all this stuff. So, I mean, you have to educate yourself to know, because there's so many different levels of this stuff.
Because
so the answer to your question is, I don't know. I couldn't give you a percentage. I know the ones that I've dealt with, and it's not that they're going out and doing it to be vindictive or try to mess people over. I mean, they have good intentions in heart. It's just they don't have the background.
Right. And I'm not trying to disparage anybody by saying that they're going out there and making it about themselves. But I mean, a lot of them do. We do know that to be the case.
Like that.
Right. Exactly. But the way I look at it is like this. If the first dentist that you ever go to as a kid is just a mean person that just wants to rip every tooth out of your mouth with a pair of pliers, then you're going to forever have a bad taste in your mouth, no pun intended, about a dentist. So the same thing can happen with a paranormal researcher. If the wrong person is the one that you deal with, it could cast aspersions toward how you feel about every other one.
I agree.
So that's the problem that people don't understand is that when you are going out there and doing this, you can say how much you want that you're representing yourself and you're representing your group, but sadly you are actually, I mean, not sadly if you're doing things right, but you are speaking for an entire community of people that you can just as easily screw them over without any meaning to, just by not being as professional as you can be.
Well, yeah, that's right. And, the public doesn't have the knowledge level as a researcher does. So they go by perception and they figure, the last team that came out there, botched things, then they're going to figure that everybody, they might figure that everybody they talk to doesn't know what's going on. And that's not the case.
Is there...
Although I will say this, that, make sure that you, when you bring a team out, research them, find out how long they've been around, see who is in the team, call them and interview them if you want to, because they're coming in to deal with your home and your family. Just don't, pick it up because you found them on the net and you call the first folks to come out. Interview them. I mean, know who you're dealing with.
It's very telling that there has been, for a long time now, over a decade, at least that I'm aware of, there's been attempts to try to standardize investigations, to try to come up with an operations manual for investigations of how it should be done. And I can't think of too many other fields of interest where people haven't been able to get on at least some kind of a same page. I mean, every backyard mechanic is going to have a different way of getting a job done, but in the end, they're all essentially doing the same thing and using the same tools. So I don't understand why with the paranormal, people haven't kind of just naturally gravitated toward some form of investigation. Now, of course, you want to be able to deviate from that for experimentation's sake, because there is no constant in this activity, but at least having some semblance of a unilateral and uniform approach.
Yeah, at least a common ground.
Right. And it seems seems like, some people are going into this from a scientific or pseudoscientific perspective. Some people are going in there just based on their gut. Other people are like, well, I'm a medium and I'm going in there to move spirits on to the other side. And there's no standardization at all. And I think that having that lack of standardization is what's helped us have increased activity and an increased awareness for activity. But at the same time, it's never going to be something that we can utilize as proof to a skeptic.
Lloyd and myself and a few other folks were trying to get something together and try to do just that. And one thing that I have noticed when we were contacting teams to try to place them within the group, so we could have teams in different states, so people could either go to them or for knowledge or bring them out to work with them. It just seems like, as you stated, everybody's got a different way of doing things. When you try to standardize things, then you get, it's always an argument with folks. It's always an argument. For instance, my thing is, I don't like K2 meters. I think they're trash. I use Alpha Labs. They've been around a lot longer and they give a better reading. They're more standardized. But that's my personal opinion. But if you've got somebody going into a place with a K2 meter that's just basically an on and off and just lights, you don't really know exactly what your levels are. You don't know what's really keying it off. You have lights, and that you try to use it for communication. It's not really a communication tool. It just doesn't work that way. But
I mean, it can. I mean, it can work for communication if there's something there, and you're saying, and I don't have any financial stake in the K2. I have a couple of them, and if I'm on an investigation, I usually hand them off to somebody else to use because I have no real use for it either. But if something can make it fluctuate, it still can be communication.
Yeah, but I mean, exactly how sensitive is that communication? Like I could put a tri-field natural down, and this thing is so sensitive it'll catch lightning strikes. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you have it set down, and I'll interview somebody and I'll ask him keywords that might have something to do with what happened in the area, and if I get an answer from them, I see it go, I could tell you that what level it went to. You can't tell that with a K2. Yeah, right. You go right. What is it? Go all the way over to red and it's yes, and then yellow's no, or however you work it. But I mean, it's just not. To me, it's just not. It's not enough information.
Right. Well, I mean, yeah, sure. For terms of data logging and for actually, keeping a hardcore, report of what's going on, yeah, a tri-field is naturally going to be better. But for, just anecdotally and in the course of an investigation, trying to find out if there's something there, again, I would never show somebody K2 hits and say, hey, this is proof that you have a ghost. But it's certainly an okay indicator that there could be activity going on.
And that's the key that you just said. People use it for proof of ghosts. You know right. What you're doing. most folks that will go out there with that K2, they see it on TV, and they figure, okay, that's what it is. It's a ghost finder. And you and I both know that there's no such thing as a ghost finder.
Right.
Well,
except the Ghost Radar app. The Ghost Radar app is
measuring
foolproof.
the environment around us with environmental tools, and for the event around you're getting the around the event. You're not in the event because we don't have anything that will measure that.
My joke didn't land there because I was trying to talk over you there. I was saying that the Ghost Radar is foolproof. That works 100% of the time because it's every time I turn it on, there's ghosts. But I was being facetious. Yeah. Please don't anybody listening to this think that I was serious about that. I was totally kidding. But I guess, though, maybe we have a different perspective of, and again, you're going into somebody's home and you're dealing with them and trying to help them understand what's going on. Usually when I'm leaving,
I'm not picking on you or anything, and I'm not. I have nothing negative about it. I'm just, we're talking, what our thoughts are.
Right. No, this is just talking shop. I love this. But this is the kind of conversations I like to have with people. But, obviously I'm in a different perspective because I'm usually going out to, maybe like an event or something where it's a different mindset. It's certainly not scientific by any stretch of the imagination. But I look at
in that situation, I can probably see that happening because it's easy. You could tell them kind of what's going on. And, a lot of the folks that you're dealing with, most of them are probably there to have fun, and they're not going to drill into it. They just say, okay, it's done this, and this is possible over here.
But you're using equipment. You're using equipment to try to get a baseline, and then to get fluctuations and be able to kind of catalog and all of that information. I look at it like this. I want to use equipment as a way to, as we were talking about before, like when you put people into a hypnotic state, to try to get them into the mindset, to kind of get them up into those beta waves. So I use the equipment to try to make them be more accepting of the fact that the phenomena is happening around them. And I understand that none of that stuff is going to actually show them that it really is. But if the K2 meter lights up and people are like, okay, wait a minute, now I think there's something around here, then their perspective changes, their outlook changes.
Now they're looking for, okay, what fired it off.
And also they're saying they're suddenly become more accepting of the fact that something's around them. So I think, I don't really want to use equipment to try to prove or disprove anything. I just kind of want to use it to get people to be accepting of it.
I can understand that.
But then again, I don't have to, kind of come up with a final report at the end of the night or the end of the investigation, however long it may go on. I don't have to kind of present that to somebody at the end of it. I can just leave at the end of the night saying, hey, did everybody have a good time? And that's all I have to worry about. So I'm not beholden to, somebody that let me come into their house and actually reached out to me and asked me for help.
Well, of course. I mean, it's two separate things.
And again, I would expect cookies if that was the case. Well, I will ask you this though, Peter, in all the investigations that you have done, if you had to put, and again, I know it's kind of hard to kind of put abstract numbers on this, but if you had to kind of guesstimate, what percentage would you say turns out to actually be something that you would consider paranormal phenomena, and how much of it is just, and again, it's hard to judge in one night or one investigation, but how much of it would you say is actual phenomena, and is that phenomena on the increase in recent years?
Phenomenon is on the increase over the years, and as we talked, it's a lot of the stress levels and things like that have gotten a lot higher as time's progressed. So I mean, taking that into consideration, I could see how poltergeist activity could probably pick up a little bit just because of what it is. Now, as far as what I've done, a lot of what I see is explainable. Okay. I would say probably, if we're talking numbers, I'd say probably 80 to 90% is explainable somehow. It's whether it's an issue within the family unit, whether it's structural of the home, if it's a medical condition, if it's somebody faking it, and I've had that happen a few times myself. Because of they're either wanting attention or just trying to see if they can weird out their parents. I've had that happen. But Yeah, I mean, I'd say probably about 10%, maybe. Yeah, 10% probably. That might be something.
If somebody
It's hard.
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, I would say if somebody came to you and said, the inverse, maybe they said to you, 80% of the time, 90% of the time, I investigate, I have something paranormal that I can't explain. Would you question their outlook, question their methodology, or?
Yes, I would.
Okay. Just because,
but not in an attacking way.
Right?
I
No.
mean, I don't do that. But I would ask them what their methodology is, and if it would be possible, if I could maybe observe during one of their things. And I'm not saying that to try to be try to grade them or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to try to understand what other folks are seeing, and what we're dealing with. And I would always try to help. I don't think that I'm above anybody. I don't. But I've always been the type of person that I like to help, and I like to teach. So if I could be in a situation to help teach, or if we can, maybe I might be doing something wrong. I mean, who knows? I'm open to that. We're all human. So a good exchanging of ideas is always great, if you can get that to happen. A lot of folks don't like to do that.
And that's what I've noticed about. There's definitely been kind of a come around a bit in the paranormal world of people saying, people being more willing to admit that they don't know, and more willing to admit that there may be something beyond just their own experiences. For a long time, everybody was trying to run around acting like they knew it all, and we're seeing a lot more of a. I mean, even Lloyd's guilty of that to some degree, of saying that he was. I've seen him and I've heard him say, like, he's one of the authorities on this stuff, and that he knows what's going on when other people don't. And I think even that mindset is a little bit hurtful to advancing these questions, because you have to be willing to say, and you know him better than I do, obviously, I'm just saying what I've heard in interviews, but you have to be willing to say, maybe one of these newcomers ends up finding something that in my 30, 40 years of doing this, I never encountered, or finds a technique that I never thought of using, and changes the game.
And I'm always been open to that. Always. Like I said, we're all people. We all don't have the answers. I can't speak for Lloyd, on what he's stating, but sure. I do know his level of knowledge is very expansive. So, I wouldn't know exactly what he would be referring to.
Well, I mean, that was what I thought. And then I talked to some folks a couple of years ago. I made a few friends who actually work with him very frequently. And and I said, well, I've always kind of thought that he was kind of standoffish on stuff, because, I hear him in these interviews, and it seems like he's not willing to accept new ideas. And they're like, I don't know what shows you're listening to, but when we're out there with him, it's completely the opposite of that. He's fascinated by anything that comes in, any new idea, any new approach, because he's been doing it for so long that you want to try new things.
Every time I've ever been around him, we've discussed cases or just whatever. Yeah, I mean, I've always gotten that from him too. I mean, he's always wanting to learn. He's, when you stop learning is when you stop getting answers.
That being said, though, I not to cut you off, but that being said, the one thing that drives me crazy is when you are dealing with a bunch of, obviously you're working with a team, so it's a little bit easier for you. But when you do like a public event, ghost hunt type thing, and if there's 40 people there and 25 of them are purportedly psychic, I kind of have to just tell the group, hey, just turn it off for tonight, because you're just going to start pulling people in all different kinds of directions that they don't need to go into. And there has been more of a proliferation of that, I would say, for sure. More people with abilities, we'll say.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that. And what frustrates me is that, when you see folks that are so readily open to stating that they're a medium or a psychic, and that's the people I watch out for. Usually, anytime I've dealt with a medium, and I don't know your friend, so please don't think I'm judging. I'm not. But anytime I've ever dealt with anybody, as far as a medium or a psychic, they're very towards themselves. I mean, they know what they can do. They know that people know to contact them if that's what they need, and they're very low key. They're not the ones that are screaming it from the rooftops. Those are the folks I worry about.
That's something that actually her and I talk about quite a bit. That if somebody comes up to you and says the first thing that they do is, hi, I'm so and so, and I'm a psychic medium. That
like Teresa Caputo, the New Jersey psychic or whatever she is. So, hi, I'm a psychic. Do you have a brother in the store? I mean, I know a lot of that's for TV too, but I've heard folks say that have gone out to see her. When they're talking to her, she's always making sure that that she's psychic.
That's one of the things that drives me crazy is that people think. I mean, I don't know Teresa Caputo. I've never even watched Long Island.
No, and I don't
Medium,
either. I'm just going by what I've seen.
But it drives me crazy when people think that what they see on TV is like accurately. Maybe she does go up to people on the street and just start saying that stuff. But chances are that it's just something that they're doing.
Well, yeah, like I said, that's TV.
Camera.
I mean, drama sells soap, so I understand that.
The other thing that always weirds me out is when people want to come up to me and the first thing that they want to tell me about is like a paranormal fishing story, like the first, well, let me tell you about what happened to me. Like, I don't even know you. And now you want to start telling me about your most intense paranormal experience. Like I don't even know if I can trust you yet. So the fish stories and the introducing yourself as a psychic automatically, just put that aside, people. We do have a caller on the line, 508-996-0500 if you'd like to talk with our guest, Peter Haviland, and we can take this call right now. Good evening. You're on Spooky South Coast.
Hey, good evening, gentlemen. How are y'all doing tonight?
We are doing well.
Doing great. How are you, sir?
I'm blessed, man. I just had a quick question. So I was in the chat room talking with some people. I brought a point up that I'd like to get both of your opinions on.
Sure.
First of all, I've been an experiencer since I was little. And when I say experiencer, I'm talking about just high strangeness in general. What do y'all think? And I'd like to hear this opinion from both of you about the connection between the UFO phenomenon and close encounters and the paranormal phenomenon such as poltergeist and whatnot.
Yeah, as far as something like that, I haven't come across anything that has crossed over like that. But I could see how it might come across like that, because from what I've heard, as far as with aliens or aliens doing that, sometimes they will speak through telepathy and things like that, which can affect your psychic self. So I can kind of see how that might do it. Does that make sense?
Right.
And
that's kind of what's happened to me in the past. I've had close encounter experiences since I was real little, and sometimes, not every time, but sometimes I would have for example, a poltergeist outbreak, like either before or after the close encounter experience. And it's just
I've heard that too.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying I've heard that as well.
Yeah, because after looking at my experiences retrospectively, after doing a lot of research, I've researched with a parapsychologist, Dr. Barry Taff. I don't know if you're familiar with him.
Yeah, Barry's good. Barry's good.
He brought a good point up in his book, Aliens Above, Ghosts Below. I highly recommend that book to anybody who's interested in real parapsychology. But that some of the information he discussed in that book seemed to back up my feelings and my theory.
Okay.
My approach.
It's something that I would probably do if you were here in Houston, and if you were having something like that. What I would probably do is I would probably put you under, and we look at the day or the time that you're having those issues, and we'd explore it to see exactly what's going on, what's happening, and what are you seeing, what is things like that. And that would probably also get you to understand a little bit more of what's going on, being able to explore that.
That's something I've considered. I've filed reports with MUFON. I live in Georgia, and there's been several experiences that I've had, both with and without the poltergeist activity, where I would literally lose hours of time, and I've considered going under regression, but at the same time, I don't really know if I really want to know what happened.
Right.
Well, that would have to be something that you would want to you'd want to get right with yourself, because it's very, it is very traumatic. As I mentioned earlier, I usually hand over the UFO stuff to Daryl Sims. He goes by the Alien Hunter, and he's also a hypnotherapist. So he has worked with a lot of abduction scenarios, and I've heard him talk about screen memories and things like that, and getting through the screen memory to understand exactly what's been happening. And it has been very, very, a lot of them have been very, very scary for the folks that experience it.
I agree. I've actually got evidence. I've got a scoop mark on my wrist, and it happened when I was 12 years old. I woke up one night and I was levitating about 3 or 4 feet above my bed, and then I felt. The next thing I knew, I fell. I hit my bed really hard, and I blacked out again. And the next morning, I had this sore on my my right wrist, and it was it's what it looks just like other pictures of scoop marks that I've seen.
Wow.
Well, I do.
Can you feel anything underneath the skin? Does it move around? I mean, what is it like?
I don't feel anything underneath it, but I know I wasn't born with it, and I know I didn't get an injury there, and it did happen after a paranormal event, as I described. And I don't like to jump to conclusions, but I know for a fact I've had many close encounter experiences, including one when I was in the military, and it just seems to follow me around.
Well, I don't mean to cut the call short, but we are running out of time. We're up against the end of the show. I thank you very much for the call.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Thank you.
All right, and Peter, I really apologize that we are running short on time, but why don't you let everybody know how they can reach out to you and how they can find you online?
Yes, they can get a hold of me through redohypnosis.com and lsspi.org.
All right, and I want to thank you so much for joining us. This was a great conversation. I could keep it going for far longer, but we're up against the end of the show, so hopefully you'll come back and join us again sometime.
I would love to. Let's do it again.
All right, thank you so much for joining us. That is Peter James Haviland. Again, his website, redoakhypnosis.com. Want to let everybody know really quickly about Parabox Monthly. You can get silk-screened soft-style tees with puzzles built right in. You can get 3-month plan. You can get a month-to-month plan, a 6-month plan. No contract, free to cancel anytime. Give it a try. Paraboxmonthly.com. And we are out of time. We'll be back next week with an all-new show. We have a very interesting one coming up next week. It may be one that you want to keep the lights on for. So stay tuned for more information coming forward this week on our social media. Until next week, stay spooktacular.